have you been? Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you, man. I'm good.
Omedetou gozaimasu.
Nice. I haven't heard that for a long time.
Yeah.
It's been about 2 years since I spent New Year's in Japan. It's quite different over here, isn't it? Like, you know, in Japan, New Year's is all about the family and all about sort of being with your family over those, 3 or 4 days. But here it's much more of sort of like a party, reveling, being with your friends sort of thing. I just spent it on the boat. I had a bottle of wine. I watched an Ozu movie and I made some music.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah. No, New Year's it's funny like that because obviously New Zealand is in the southern hemisphere, and so it's it's the middle of summer. In Wellington, not that warm, but still 20, 25 degrees, that sort of thing. If it's a sunny day, and then we've got the kind of all of the cultural norms are like flipped. So there's middle of summer barbecues, and everyone's kind of out at the beach, that sort of thing. But then at the last minute, the local council here decided that too many people were going to gather, and so they decided to cancel the fireworks on the waterfront.
Oh, no.
And so we went down there anyway, and everyone had stocked up on Guy Fawkes, November 5th. And so people were just down there doing amateur fireworks, like shooting them, from their hands, shooting them out of the windows of cars. It was actually really cool because it was right there on the beach. There's a small little kind of artificial beach in Wellington. Yeah, that was really cool. Like just, the council pulled out, but we're going to do it anyway.
Nice. Do you celebrate Guy Fawkes in New Zealand?
Yeah. No, it's. I can imagine it's going to be clamped down in a couple of years, maybe. Like they're starting to get quite strict with selling fireworks, but Guy Fawkes is still celebrated. You can buy, firecrackers and things, but people have kind of forgotten what Guy Fawkes was all about, though. With all of this stuff happening. But I think it's an important thing to remember. Government works for the people, not the other way around. And yeah, it's just one of these kind of legacy things. I remember my father talking about like the old days. You got like the actual bottle rockets and things, but now they're a little bit more muted. But yeah, every year there's still injuries.
Yeah, definitely, man. But, same here.
But yeah, I can say like the overall mood, like for sure, was like coming out of that was people are ready to move on with their lives.
What, get rid of 2021, you mean?
Yeah, like it's like kind of get rid of the old and start something new. And I'm already feeling that it's sort of slowly seeping through. A slight bit of optimism that people are sort of ready to move on from kind of the way things were. But still there's other things which are working against that. But yeah, I can appreciate taking it easy on New Year's Eve.
What did you get up to?
So we saw the fireworks and then we came back and I just we caught up with some friends and just it was low key. Like it definitely wasn't a party night or anything. Just caught up with a few friends and then came back home and took it easy. I think we counted in the new year, but we came home not soon after that. But it didn't feel like it was the time to really celebrate anything. It was still kind of like, is 2021 still here? With everything that's been going down.
It was a funny year. Like 2021 sort of felt a bit worse than 2020 in a lot of ways. Like in 2020 we just like battened down the hatches and got through it, and then in 2021 it was more like stop, start, can we go out? Yes, no, okay, let's go back inside.
It's broken people. Yeah,
it was, and it really did break a lot of people. And most people that I spoke to were having a very, very quiet New Year's Eve, right? Because they didn't want to go out and party. One, because Omicron was rampant in London. I think something like 1 in 10 people had it. And it was basically, when am I going to get Omicron rather than if I'm going to get Omicron.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people stayed at home. And that was like the general consensus for most people that I spoke to. But like, I live with so many apartment buildings around me, here on the boat, and I can tell you that there were a lot of parties going on, Jesus Christ, until like 4 or 5 a.m. Fireworks until 3 a.m. Like it was. But I guess probably it was a bit more scaled back than it would have been 3 years ago or something, like 2 years ago.
No, people need to kind of release, and I agree with you. 2021 was a extremely difficult year, and there was a lot of kind of compounding things where governments get involved in things and they start messing with it and tattooing with it, as we would say, and it really doesn't help. And so I have a feeling 2022 is going to be the year of the kind of the after effect and the fallout of all of that. We're starting to see it financially and economically in New Zealand. Like, I just started to stock up on a few things now because we've got some supply chain issues in the supermarkets. Starting to just get a little bit more food than we need, because I got caught out last time. We had the second big lockdown for a couple of weeks, and we had no food in the pantry. We just didn't. We kind of shopped as we needed it. That night I went out, and it was very stressful, man. Like, getting enough food for a week. I could have gone back, but there would have been huge queues, and so everyone got the same idea. Everyone went to the supermarket, and obviously I didn't have any food for that night either. So going into the supermarket where everyone was there, and I managed to get in early enough. I still had to wait an hour in line at the checkout. But I could have seen, I saw people, they were lined up out the door of the supermarket waiting to get food, and that's not really a good situation to be in.
No, and were they panicking? Was it like an uneasy atmosphere?
Oh yeah, I was probably about 15 minutes away from just walking out with my groceries, and not even paying, because everyone was lining up, and and the checkouts were running full steam. But I was like, look, I need this food. Everything's shutting down as of midnight tonight. This is my food. I'll walk out and I can just, get the phone number of the manager and come and pay for it tomorrow or something. But I ended up just waiting it out, but I had to put music on and just, meditate or something, man, because it was just so crazy. And people were trying to be friendly and kind of chilled out, but it was like you could sense the unease, and being caught up in that, it's quite distressing, man. Did you have anything like that happen on your side?
So when the second lockdown happened, I had just arrived back in the UK. I just literally got back in the UK December 18th. And then I think the big lockdown was December 26th. I think it was Boxing Day. And basically the government here had said, like, you can have Christmas Day with your family, and then from Boxing Day, basically, stay at home. So I was in, I wasn't working at the time. I just arrived back in the UK. I wasn't really desperate to get out. I had nowhere to go anyway. I was back in Suffolk with my family. I had a pretty nice time of it, actually, just, walking the dog and stuff like that. Making a lot of music and sort of, I was doing January. That's right. I did January last year. So that was keeping me busy. And then basically we just had lockdown until, I think it was like April or something like that. It was March or April 2021 when it started to loosen up. And then May was like a little bit looser, and then, just these step downs. But did I see the panic? No, not really. I don't know. No, I imagine if I was here for the first lockdown, yes, I would have seen that, because I saw the panic in Japan and I saw the anxiety in everybody. And I remember very vividly going to Konbini or the supermarket and just seeing everybody was so depressed and so scared. And especially because I'm a tall white guy, I think there was an extra layer of fear there, where they were sort of, really moving out of my way for fear of catching the foreigners.
I don't know if it was just that, man, because even here, I had people like it's funny because people are now programmed to kind of respond to this, and I had people, step aside on the street, give me 2 meter berth, wearing a mask, or like slipping their mask on as they pass me, and I'm like, come on, like we're neighbours, just walking down my street, there's no need for this. And it's created this kind of Pavlovian, Pavlov's dog, this kind of response. Are you familiar with that?
Where the bells, right?
The dog salivates, and then they zap it and punish it for doing that, and so it puts it off the food. But anyway, it was. I actually would say the first lockdown that we had here, which was way back in like March, April or something, 2020. That was the one where I was like, okay, this is kind of, we'll get through this. But people still had this kind of underlying optimism that we'd get through it, and so it was kind of an unknown. But people, kind of dealt with it, and we went out to the park, went for walks, and everyone was like, quite cheery and easygoing. But it was the second time round where people were like, look, we've had enough of this. The fact that the government just like came and dropped it on us, and with 1 day's notice, so it was like midnight tonight. We're going into lockdown. It's like, well, man, people had to get out and get back home. So people are, oh man, I've got to get on a flight, I've got to get a car or something to get back, because we had these regional borders as well, and getting food, all of those things, and it was really uncalled for. And I think looking back, people are going to be like, okay, that was a mistake. I mean, it was a mistake, but the way it was done, and the fear that it's inspired in people is unforgivable, in my opinion. And I look at, you and I are both sort of free thinkers in that regard, I think, but I look at people who are maybe, they just sort of, they maybe a bit more trusting, and they take every word that the media says, and they're like, okay, that's what's happening, and it's broken them, and you see people do things which are completely illogical, but for them it's needed to cope with the situation. So, the whole thing of like, well, you sit down, you take your mask off, and then you eat with your mask off, and then you put it back on to go to the bathroom. It's like, look, you're already you're in the place, you're in the space, you're breathing the same air. But it's become that Pavlov's dog, It's like, well, I need to do this. It's too much effort to think about not doing it, and so I just comply and I just do it. Or I scan it and I check it and I do all of that stuff, and it's like they've been conditioned, and that free will and that free thinking and that question of like, why am I doing this? It's too big of a question to ask, and so they just ignore it.
It's scary. It's too scary as well. Too big of a question, too scary of a question. And there's a lot of talk these days about. I don't really want to get into this, but there's a lot of talk about mass formation psychosis.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So it's sort of like a dangerous territory to wander into. But if anybody is interested about learning more, have a look at search for mass formation psychosis online. It's kind of scary stuff. But
that's it though. I mean, being optimistic about it. Like, I think one of the challenges with New Zealand and potentially with the UK for a long time now is that they've been very, or maybe, I guess let me phrase this. There's been issues in the UK, just kind of national security, kind of attacks and things like that, and the same with New Zealand actually. But generally speaking, they've been very safe countries for a long time, and there's not been civil wars or internal turmoil, that sort of thing. And I think when you look at countries that maybe people who come from countries where there has been issues, in many ways they're often more equipped to deal with this stuff than the rest of us. Or even just looking at historical examples, you think, well, how did people get through World War II or through the Blitz? How did people get through this, that, or the other thing? But not in the sense of like, well, there's an enemy out there, but actually that there's an enemy within. And that's where it gets challenging, because you've got the propaganda machine running full tit, and people are, just soaking it up. And, I think that's where something like what we're doing here, just talking about ideas, is really important, because there is this kind of reliance on mass media, and they're calling it an information war. I don't know if you've heard that. But with with the way media are, they are controlling the narrative, and they're able to manipulate things in a way that, with social media, that was never possible before. And that's why, talking about ideas, sharing our thoughts, and coming back to the good things in life is so important.
Creating.
Like creating. And that's a good segue to now jump from mass formation psychosis to your new album.
Well, I think it would be really nice for us to talk this in this episode about, the year ahead, 2022, what we're both planning on doing, which definitely should include a lot of planning for our road trip across America.
Yes, yes. Well, I am keen to do that. I'll make a note of that. But do we want to jump into your album first?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, so I have a new album, which is fantastic. It's called Motion, and I wrote it. I guess I started writing it in October 2021, and yeah, it's out next month, and it's basically, I'm not very good at talking about my music, but it's kind of like the last 10 years of my life, living abroad, living in cultures that are not my own, and like culture shock, going through so many different culture shocks. And then, so that's the last 10 years of my life. And then spending the last year back at home, this album is sort of like the inspiration of those two chapters of my life, like just completely smashing together.
Wow.
Like living in the jungles of Borneo, and then living in a narrowboat in a canal in London. It's just sort of like the difference between those two has inspired this album. But it's also an exploration into, I don't know, I always say this with all my releases, right? Like Soundscapes Radio episode 15 is closer to what I have in my head, the music that I have in my head. And then Soundscapes Radio episode 16 is closer to the music that I have in my head, the sort of sounds that I want to get onto the page. And then my last album, Fragments, was even more closer, and I was just like, yes, this is it, right? I'm almost getting what's inside my head onto the page. And then Motion, I think, is like pretty much what I can hear in my head, and I'm proud of it. I won't beat around the bush. Like, I'm proud of what I've done. It's taken about 4 years to get here, but yeah, no, I'm really excited. I'm just trying to get as many people as I can to listen to it, really.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I've really enjoyed it. I've listened to it quite a lot, and I might have another listen after this, because I've been trying to just, because it's a very it's a very powerful work, and the way that the tracks all sort of blend into each other. I'm still kind of working it out, kind of identifying which one, where each one starts and where each one ends, because I just listen to the whole thing. But overall, it's very fantastic. How did you come up with the name, the title, Motion?
Well, I guess it comes back to a lot of my naming, and a lot of my track naming especially comes back to the idea of movement. And then I guess if we think about it, it always comes back to the idea of derive, right? Like I mean that honestly. Yeah. Like, a lot of my track names, if you look at them, are all about like movement, wandering, traveling. And so Motion, it just made so much sense to me. Like when I was hunting for the name for this album, it just immediately the word motion came to my head. And then I tried some other things, and I thought, something else, maybe I'll, call it this or that. But I always kept coming back to motion. I think it makes so much sense because I have been in motion for so much of my life.
And often the first name you come up with is the one. It just is, like you don't, if you try and second guess it, you're you're turning your back on that kind of initial inspiration. And I really love that, what you just said about the idea of motion and movement, because as you know, both of us, we have this kind of connection, and I feel I mean, I get warm and fuzzy thinking about it, because we're both sort of drinking from the same whale of of water here, the same inspiration. That idea of dragging the needle of the record player across the land as you wander around, and kind of capturing the sound or the images or the stories. That's my creative life force. And non-artistic people, or people who are not really creating that much, maybe don't quite know what that means. But I think for all of our listeners, they could probably relate to that. There is like a life force from the work, and being able to like tap into it, it's I mean, it's euphoric, right?
It's powerful.
Yeah. And you mentioned you have the sounds in your head about the music in your head. Like, tell me more about that. What does that mean?
I guess it's the amalgamation of all of my influences, all of the music in my life that inspires me in some way, whether that's ambient music or whether that's like Lana Del Rey, pop music or whatever. But I guess this up in my head is this kind of sound that I want SJF to be, and it's my whole music career for the last 3 years especially has been trying to capture that kind of amalgamation of the inspiration in my head. Because it is so diverse. My music taste is so diverse, and I really do feel that even genres that I listen to, like prog rock definitely inspires my sound. I mean, that you can hear that in so many of my songs. But something more esoteric, like I already mentioned Lana Del Rey or like Bob Dylan or something. You wouldn't immediately assume that was inspiring my sound, but it gets thrown into my head, and it's kind of like a big just hurricane of music that I've listened to over my life, and that's what in turn inspires me, I guess. That's
beautiful. I can kind of respond to that, like Lana Del Rey. She's very nostalgic. Like it's like this non-linear thing where it's from, say, recently, but it sounds old, and I really love that sort of thing. And with a lot of that music, from my perspective, like maybe you've listened to it, but you don't regularly listen to it, but it's still there floating around as inspiration, if you know what I mean. And so you can kind of, when you're in the creative process, you just bring it all together, and then you can meld it and play with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when I'm writing melodies, for example, I don't come from a classical music background, so I sort of like just feel my way around the piano a lot of the times, and when I land on a note, the next note that I play when I'm writing will very much be inspired by the music that I've listened to before. Instead of, I'm sure other musicians who are classically trained will know what note would be the next one to go to make the sound that they want. I sort of have to fumble my way around and then be like, oh yeah, that feels right. So I do that a lot.
Wow, that's incredible though. That sounds though, in a way, like almost that's the way to do it. Just to go through it, and I mean that's your way, and yeah, man, that's beautiful. That creative process it's important. That kind of font of creativity. I mean, I might have sent you that video from I was at Wong Kar Wai, Fallen Angels, and it's just overlaid with that song by the Fallen Pickets. And I was just listening to that last night a couple of times in a row, and I was like, man, this this is it. You know, it's like the song, the visuals, the motion, the colours, and it's just I mean, it sounds a bit basic, but for me, it's like creative orgasm. You know, like that's it. You know, and I just watch that and I'm like, damn. And then I can take that and use that as like energy, as fuel to go and do some writing or do something else. And then, you know, you've nailed it when your own work does that. If
right.
You know what I mean? You know, like when you're like, shit, this is it. You know, like I could still, when I come back to Ascension, your piece, and I'm like,
love
damn,
Ascension.
this takes me to my place. You know, this is like a shared creative endeavor. It's like a child or something in a way, and it just is what it needed to be. And then with some of the other things we've collaborated on, like I saw the Bangkok Phosphors soundtrack just pop up on YouTube, and then just the thumbnail of that boat in the canal, and I was like that's it. You know, like if I wasn't me, that would be what I go and listen to and be like, wow, this is it. And I think for the last 2 years, it's been such a shit show because I haven't really been able to do that to the same degree. And so it's like, oh no. And I mean, we're still finding ways to do it, and you've proven that with releasing this album. But in many ways, it's challenging because we're in the kind of retrospective phase of creation. We're not in the kind of gathering phase. And so all of these memories of places I've been and things that I've done, they're sitting there in the memory bank, and I'm now sifting through them, but I would love to be able to go and replenish the memory bank, you know?
I love it. We need to do it. We need to do a jam session together again, I feel like. You know,
yeah.
Ascension was basically born from jamming, you know, together.
Yeah.
Me and you, riffing ideas off each other.
Yeah.
And then sort of coming up with Ascension. And we also did, you know, I came over to yours and we did the Derived Tokyo piece.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, man. Like, because I've been reflecting on a few things lately, like, because, you know, I've got this, you know, business doing websites and design and things, and I'm starting to think, you know what, like, what is my purpose on this earth? And it's cool. Like we're making stuff happen. Like it's all good. But I'm like, you know what? Really, I'm getting to the point now. It's like peering things back. Me, my camera, and my computer, and being one of the characters from my stories again. Like the stories I'm working on at the moment. It's like that's like another form of me, like the character in there. And I haven't. It's funny because I've got this thing, and I should send you some of it, man. But it's like it's almost there. Like it's like 69,000 words. You know, it's almost there, and I'm just going through another edit of it. But this novel, this story, it's like encapsulating everything about what you and I do. It's this wandering kind of idea. And I'm like, this is me, you know, this is like a form of me injected into this story, a persona. And when do
you think that your purpose in life has to be creative?
Yeah. I've really tried previously and to be more money driven. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, all right, you know, I need to go and get a job. Not get a job, but I need to get work. You know, I'm unemployable. You know, I have to work for myself, but working for clients, that is, you know, I need to do this. You know, but in a way, and this is kind of this youthful playfulness where it's like I actually don't mind being poor and unemployed and not working.
You're not poor, though, are you?
You know, I mean, so previous, you know, because I have. You know, I've been broke before. And it's like being in that situation was like the most creative time of my life, you know?
Yeah.
And kind of, in a way, like having enough resources to actually be able to make stuff happen and be able to jump on a plane and stuff is cool. But at the same time, like not being too opulent. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think actually this is something I've been thinking a lot about recently. Like, you know, do I have too much stuff? Like I recently, I bought an iPad recently, one of the new iPads, and before I got it, I was so excited. I was like a child at Christmas, you know. I'd ordered it, and it was like pick up from the Apple Store. The week before I picked it up, every day, like my excitement grew. I was thinking about all these things that I could do with the iPad and all this music that I could make with it and stuff, and I could draw and I could write and stuff like that. And I got it, and I took it back home, and I unboxed it, and I felt so guilty. Immediately. I immediately felt this massive wave of guilt, and I was like, I've just bought this. It's a fantastic product, but do I really need this? Like, you know, this is because I bought it on my credit card, so I'm going to have to be paying this off for the next like year or something. You know, pay installments every month, right? And I was just like, fuck. It was unexplainable. This massive wave of guilt that just came over me.
I know what you mean. Like, I'm really bad like that as well. Like when I get, like, I'm able to justify it with gear. So maybe an iPad I could probably justify personally, but with anything that's not related to my work, like any personal stuff, like I really have to convince myself to spend the money. And
so what kind of stuff would that be? Do you mean like a video games console?
Oh, I know, like clothes. Like I'm real bad with that. Like I've gotten to the point now where I've mentally been able to justify it, like my clothes, because I generally wear the same thing every day. I know that sounds a bit cliche, but
no, it's great, man.
I got these merino t-shirts, merino wool, and they're really good, like breathable. But I'm able to justify it and be like, well, when we go back to Cambodia, or we go back traveling in some hot place, and it's like, if I have this merino t-shirts, they dry out really quickly. You don't need to wash them as much as you do with cotton, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, in my mind, it's gear. It's technical wear. It's something I'd wear when I'm shooting photos. And so it goes into the gear box, and it goes with all my stuff, and so it's justifiable. But something like some decoration for the home or some kind of nice to have thing, I find it very hard to want to do that. I have to actively plan it out and be like, well, this would be nice for when we have friends over or something. But there's a lot of momentum stopping me from just going and buying junk.
But that's great, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah. But the flip side of that, which is interesting, is this kind of home ownership, right? Which is now like, I mean, a lot of my work is about homes and places, and looking at people I know who own a home, and people who are getting onto the property ladder, as they say, snakes and ladders. It's funny because they start to fill their house with shit, you know. And you get the furniture, you get all this gear, and there's like these kind of decor stores that really cater to that. And I can kind of see where they're coming from, because you're like, you've got this thing and now you've got to fill it. And the kind of the alternative to that is like, well, actually, I really like living in just banal places that don't really have anything, or they're functional, or they're utilitarian, maybe a little bit broken, worn down, and kind of making do with what's there. There's something about that kind of reusing things, repurposing things I find quite nice. Like, I got out yesterday, actually, and because there's this talk of a food crisis, a food shortage in New Zealand right now, and I'm kind of a little bit concerned because, you know, we're an island country, and if things like rice and that all come in from overseas, but also just fresh fruit and vegetables. And so we actually have a glass house out the back of our place.
Oh, nice.
A small one, and the landlords used to use it, but they've moved out, and so it's empty. So I got in there yesterday and weeded it, and ordered some seeds online for some squash and tomatoes and things. So I'm going to try and reuse that. But it was really cool because it was like, it's not like, oh, we're going to start a veggie garden. It's like, no, there's already a veggie garden there. We're just like reactivating it. And I got out the weed whacker, and you know and it was all, I had to fill it up with oil and stuff and fix it up. But it's like I use that to clear it out, and it felt cool. It was like, not just buying new stuff. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, man. And are you thinking about getting like chickens or anything like that?
Oh yeah. So I'm not going to be able to do chickens, I don't think, but I've definitely thought about it. Like, and just where we are, it's too urban to do chickens. But I was like, yeah, I could see myself getting into that sort of thing. But a part of me is also like, I don't really want to. And the reason I don't want to is because it connects me to the land a lot more than I ever have been. It feels really good, but at the same time, like I'm starting to have to reconcile letting go of this idea of being like a traveller, if you know what I mean. Like, the world's changing, man.
You won't have as much freedom as you do now if you're stuck to a farm or something like that. Is that what you mean?
So it's kind of a process of acceptance, and who knows, maybe things will get better. But I'm one part of me is actually, honestly, I was so satisfied yesterday. I spent about 3 hours cleaning up the yard and the veggie garden. Like it was zen-like, man, honestly. And I know it sounds a bit random, but like I can see why like my grandma is into gardening and stuff. Like it's very therapeutic. And by the end of the day, I cleaned out all the weeds. I actually found there was a small truss tomato that had still been growing in there, like because the whole thing was all died off. But and I fixed up the irrigation system because it's more like a hose that drips down. So I fixed that up, and I was like, man, I've just done real work in real life to make this thing happen. And it just was like so therapeutic, and I slept like a baby last night, like just because it was quite hard work.
Do you think this is agitated by the pandemic, or do you think this was always within you and it was just waiting to come out, this self-sustaining kind of lifestyle?
Oh yeah, I think it was always there. Like I look at my family and there's definitely inspiration there. But there's also like I don't know, it's kind of like the intersection of different ideas, because I really love that, but I mean actually in a different life I was even like considering becoming an agronomist, which is the person who consults on for farmers and orchardists and that on what chemicals to use and how to grow things, basically like kind of technical advice for farmers. I was like, in a different life I could see myself going back and studying agronomy, irrigation, fertilizers, all of that stuff, and because it's quite technical, and basically being like a local agronomist and not the wanderer that you see before you, and especially just knowing a lot of those kinds of people, like they're very salt of the earth kind of. It's a good life, and you're not worried about international stuff. You're not digital, you're out there in the field doing it. But it's not backbreaking because there is a lot of tech involved. So it's like you've got the best of both worlds.
It's a very honest life, I think, simple and honest. I'm really drawn to that as well. And I think one day I would really like to have my own self-sustaining kind of garden, or, I tell everybody I know that I want to keep bees. I'm really fascinated with bees, and I want to have a couple of hives and make honey and sell it at the local market.
Oh man,
I'm really fascinated by this, man.
Bees are amazing because at my dad's place, my uncle used to run about 5 or 6 beehives, like manuka honey, because it's all manuka and that. And they've been hit hard though by the varroa mite. It's like a small parasite, and it gets into the bees, and then I think that causes a bacteria that's a vector for some other pest to actually kill off the hives. That's been a big issue. And it's one of these like doomsday scenarios where it's like, well, if the bees all die, then who's going to pollinate stuff? So yeah, that was, I think that's why he pulled out his hives. But besides that, they were cool, and they keep everything. We get a lot of honey out of them, and they just kind of keep things fertile, because they're always around pollinating. And then my dad's got a couple of cattle, like Angus beef cattles, and he had some ducks, but they got washed away in a flood. They were nesting down in the. It's very it's like non-commercial farming, but, just for himself. But, you pretty much one cow or one steer can keep you with enough meat for like a year, man. Because he had 4, and then he shot one, and he's like still got meat in the freezer from it. And, enough meat to go around to the neighbours, and that sort of thing. And you realise, like, man, that's the way to live,
It's one way to live. It's a way that really attracts both of us, right?
Yeah, like, and it's very homely, very connected. And when you realise that a lot of the lifestyle that we had, looking at somewhere like Hong Kong, Tokyo, Bangkok, these places, they're systems upon systems, they're supply chains upon supply chains. And like the bottle of milk in the Tokyo convenience store, like, where did that come from? How did it get there? You realise that there's actually quite a lot of overhead and waste. Whereas, literally growing the thing in your backyard and having the dairy farm, because there's you can go and just get the milk from the neighbours or get the eggs, like it's very local. And there is a movement globally, I think, towards that local, like grow local, eat local.
Sharing culture as well, right? Like if I make some honey, then I can give it to you down the road and you make bread. And then we can swap the honey and the bread, and then down the road we have like a chicken farmer. It's like the sharing culture. This is what I'm really interested in as well. Self-sustaining, but also within a community where, we have a baker and a bee farmer and stuff like that.
There's a concept I've been thinking about a little bit as well. Like when I was flatting back in uni, I was living with this guy, and he was doing a master's degree in, it would have been like development studies or something. So he went over to Tonga, and it was like, researching them and kind of the development of the Tongan economy and that. Ken was his name. He was quite an older guy at the time. Not much older than me now, though, but back then. Anyway, I remember he was working as doing road work, shoveling asphalt and that sort of thing. But at the same time, he was this kind of like quite frail academic master's degree type person. And I remember talking to our other flatmate, and I was like, man, this is incredible. You've got this kind of poet, academic, ivory tower guy, but as a day job, he's shoveling asphalt. And realizing that actually, that's the true nature of man, and even like Viktor Frankl, he's this psychologist, academic type, but when the time came, he was shoveling bricks and rocks to make railway tracks and, in a concentration camp and that sort of thing. And you realise that it's like sometimes the work that you do and then your real work are different things. And in some ways they can be positive and as in it kind of fleshes out who you really are. And so I often think that, even if I was forced to do something, or I was in a position where I was shoveling asphalt, it would only add to my work, my real work, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I think there's something to say about the repetition of those kind of jobs. Like, if you are working on the roads, your job is very, very repetitive. And so in those moments when you're doing that job, you do have a lot of time to think and develop ideas and get inspiration from outside sources. And then you can spend the day like mulling on it. Whereas if you have a job that's very like high functioning and you have to use your brain a lot, it's definitely going to deplete your energy by the end of the day, I guess.
Well, we've talked about this before, like my job when I was cleaning offices and I got the inspiration to go to Japan, right? I was just vacuuming these empty buildings, and it was zen-like, honestly. And I often think, man, if I could only go back to do that, not have to engage the critical mass of my brain, because even Friday, I had a big day of meetings. I'm dealing with people all over the world, and I'm like talking about websites and design and creative stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know, man. Like, this is pretty mentally taxing on me. I wish I could just go and do something that didn't require any kind of deep creative thought and just exist, and just kind of hammer nails or shovel asphalt or something. I don't know.
Yeah, work maybe on a packing line or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe it's being romantic about it, because it's like I can see myself getting quickly fed up with that, especially when you're working in a system like you. What I think I liked about cleaning office buildings was it was like I was quite independent. I just, there's no boss really.
Yeah, I think the best job, if you're a creative, for example, right, the best job for you to get a bit of money would be something that was completely repetitive, where you could put some headphones in and listen to audiobooks and podcasts all day.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, how good would that be, right? And you didn't have a boss breathing down your neck. So as long as your job fits all of these criteria, that would just be absolutely perfect.
Yeah. So I often think about that, like, do I need to simplify a bit? Because, man, I don't know, like, just the adventure as well, and dealing with different classes of people, like, white collar work, so to speak. It's kind of like you're dealing with the same kinds of people. And if I ever have to say, "Oh, let's jump on a Zoom call," or let's, like just the shit that people say, it's like the remote work generation. It's like, come on, fuck off, like. I don't want to jump on a Zoom call. I don't want to talk about that. And I mean, I have to. It's my job, but it's also like, I would rather just go out there and fucking do the rigging on a container ship that's taking shit over to, over to Fiji, or, pick apples in my hometown, or, shovel asphalt, like that kind of fatalism as well, like, of the artist, where it's like, well, this is all I can do. This is all I'm going to do. And then from that kind of emerges these like beautiful things, as opposed to that safety of like a well-paying white-collar job. But you're not safe, because it can all be taken away from you, as we've seen with COVID, and people's systems, like the way they consider their life as this kind of well-kept thing, this well-kept garden. It's like it can easily go away. Life doesn't work like that. Like
the last 2 years have really shown that, haven't they?
Yeah, and it's like a false sense of security that it's like, well, everything's going to be okay, because it may in fact be okay, but it may not be. And if you have a system built upon a system, say like a house, or this kind of niche job or whatever, it's kind of like, well, how susceptible is that to change and shock, shocking, impact from other things, because we can pack up and I could have everything I need, within 25 minutes I'd be ready to leave this place that I'm in, and I'd leave a bit of stuff behind, but I'd be comfortable to just get out of here in 25 minutes. Whereas if you own a house, it's full of stuff. The emotional attachment that you have to those objects is going to be so strong that it's going to take you weeks to move out, and even then, it's going to be this like quite destructive process. But for me, it's whatever, I'll be out here, and I'm not too phased about it. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I'm being more attracted to that kind of way of life recently. Like when I left Tokyo, it was really difficult to give up a lot of things that, like you say, I was emotionally attached to, and that goes down to even things like plates and bowls and cutlery and teapots that I got in Morocco and cups that I got here or there and everything. What this all meant in the end is that leaving Tokyo was a very, very stressful time, because we had to think about where to send everything, and it of course cost a lot of money, and we didn't even have a big house. Like we were living in a small-ish apartment. Like imagine if we had a big house that we had full of stuff that we were emotionally attached to, how difficult that would have been to get back to the UK. What a nightmare.
Yeah it's maybe that's why I write about I'm writing about these characters who are like so lightweight. They're wanderers. They carry everything they need on their back, and they just it's kind of Faustian in a way. They just kind of walk through the world, and they see and they do and they engage, and everything, they take everything at face value as they encounter it. You know, they don't have any preconceptions about things or expectations about things, you know, because the physical baggage is one thing, but there's also the mental baggage, you know. And it's that sense of wandering which kind of considering things. You know, we have this social media and the internet now, where everything is connected and you can find it all and it's there and it's streamlined and it's this and that. And we've created a system of just life is easy in a way. Like, it's logistically easy.
Well, it's comfortable, right? It's too comfortable.
It's logistically easy and too comfortable, but it's spiritually and kind of creatively, it hasn't changed one bit. You know, you're still dealing with the same questions of existence and meaning as everyone has before you, but with the false sense of security of an easy life. And it's why, in a way, this mass formation psychosis, all of this stuff has come up in a way. And in most countries, the ones that have experiencing the most are the ones that are the most developed, you know, free and liberal countries in the world. You know, this place like New Zealand or Canada, you know, which are like, you know, everyone's like, wow, those are the most corruption-free, open places in the world. But at the same time, they can quickly go the other way. And maybe the people who are the most realistic are the ones who have, as I said, seen it all before and been used to turmoil, and that's just another thing that I've had to deal with.
How are things going over in New Zealand with the government?
It's definitely a lot better than I had expected. I was ready for it to be very difficult. Let me put it that way.
Well, I think you were ready to leave, weren't you?
I am ready to leave at 25 minutes notice. But yeah, there's a few challenges there. Like, we're still an island nation, and the airports and kind of coming back are very locked down. So if we leave, we can't actually come back. So there's people who've been stuck overseas for like 2 years, and they can't get a spot in the quarantine facility. You know, and we literally have name, it's called the MIQ, Managed Isolation Quarantine, and you have to book it in. Awful. You have to pay for it at $3,000 to $5,000, and you got to stay there for 14 days. And I can see myself losing my mind if I had to do that 2 weeks by myself in a hotel room. I mean, I can do it on my own terms, but when it's the government forcing me to do it, ideally not. But yeah, I'm trying to be realistic. Like, I think 2022 will be the year of collapse, man. Like, in a good way or bad way, whatever. Because just economically, man, things are just not looking good here, and with inflation and everything, it's like, we're kind of paying for what happened last year now. But on the other side of all of that, there is opportunity, and it's opportunity to kind of rethink things, rebuild systems, because, you know, things weren't that great prior to this. You know, it was pretty unsustainable. You know, housing prices, cost of living, wages, all of that stuff. So I'm kind of hoping that it just shakes the snow globe, and just resets things a little bit. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, man. Like, things here have been a bit funny. Like, I noticed, like, we don't have so many places that are enforcing these vaccine passports or anything like that. Most famously, the NHS in England is going to be moving to requiring vaccines for all their staff from April.
Oh, I saw that.
This was quite big news. Yeah, it was quite big news. But it's sort of like, you know, a lot of companies are still not really enforcing it. And I booked tickets to go to see a live show the other day, and when I booked the tickets, they said basically you have to either prove that you've had the vaccine, prove that you've had a negative lateral flow test in the last 24 hours, or prove that you've had COVID before. And I think this is a nice way to go about it. Like, you know, it gives people options rather than just saying you must have the vaccine if you want to come to this event. You know, I think having that flexibility, and especially because the science is leaning towards, you have immunity if you've had COVID before. So I think you have to have like the specific strain. You know, like if I've had 2020 COVID before, it doesn't mean I'm immune from Omicron. But if I've had Omicron, it means that I'm fairly immune from catching it or passing it or anything. So I'm really glad to see that a lot of companies are doing this kind of flexible kind of passport thing.
Yeah.
But the other day I was walking through London and I saw a shop that said that you cannot, because I think it was a restaurant or it was a bar or something like that, and they said you can't come in without a vaccine passport. And it's the only time I've seen it. I've only seen it once in the whole time. But that really shocked me, you know, because you sent me those pictures of New Zealand or Wellington, wasn't it? And there was a couple of places that said don't come in if you don't have the pass.
Yeah,
everywhere. Is it everywhere?
Yeah,
now?
Every cafe, restaurant, bar, gym, hairdresser, that sort of thing. Yeah, vaccine passport is required. Papers, please, at the door. They scan it. Most places are not required to actually scan it. They just need to cite it. But the majority of these kind of goody two-shoes Wellington places are actually scanning it and verifying it, seeing your date of birth, your status, all of that. And people have zero issues with it. And I look at it and I'm like, this is the most fucked thing that's ever happened. And the thing is, it just kind of happened. And as I said, I was ready for the worst. I was ready for, I was ready for it to be a lot worse than it was. The reality is, like, a lot of places aren't enforcing it. They say they are, but they're not. So we're in this kind of grey zone. And again, it's a false sense of security where it's like, it's not a major issue. We're kind of just, it's a formality, But actually, until the system is dismantled, I think it still poses a huge threat to freedom, and people... the next thing they'll be doing is saying, well, we're going to tie this to your bank account. We're going to tie it to your immigration status, And they've actually started to talk about that. So I had two friends, or a Japanese couple I know actually, who are very skilled farmers, organic farmers, working, in that space. They had a family over here, but they've just returned back to Japan because there's just some issues around the potential that the immigration, because they were waiting on some visas, that their immigration status would have the caveat of requiring their children to get vaccinated, which they were against for their own reasons, which is totally fine. But they left, so New Zealand has lost these two hugely productive organic farmers, working on a huge farm out there. And I thought, that was the most sad thing, because we went and saw them the other week, and I was like, man, I'm sorry, like what my government has done to you. And they're going to have to get their oldest child into high school in Japan. Luckily, he's been keeping up with his kanji and that, so he should integrate. But it's like he's spent the last 5 years being a Kiwi boy, and now he's going back to Japan to start high school. And it's like, man, it's going to be a culture shock, because it's just different ways of approaching things. And I looked at that and I was like, man, this is horrible. And a lot of people are in the same boat. Like I'm kind of like, I'm ready to leave if the government clamps down any further, just on principle. But there's a lot of people who are feeling that. So who knows, man? Like I think what's happened effectively is that the government has, in their infinite wisdom, they've created systems that are very hard to walk back, in to undo what they've done. And so they're having to take this long way. And I think there's already murmurs that they've kind of fucked it up and they've gone too far down the fear route. And so people are now, and I know people who are so broken and fearful for the future that they just can't think for themselves. And now the government's like, wait a minute, actually, this isn't going to be good. So they're starting to kind of pull back a little bit. But still, man, the damage has been done. And it'll take a generation to undo, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to hear that they are actually realising that they've gone a bit too far, because I think a lot of governments, once they've enacted these policies, there is no plan to step back at all. Like, once you've got vaccine passports in place, it's never going to go back to what it was before. You know, I worry for the future when flying requires a vaccine passport. And you know, you'll be blocked from 50% of the world because you don't have a vaccine or something like that.
Well, it's now endemic, right? So I mean, there'll be flare-ups every year forever, you know. And that's fine, you know, like that's just the way it is. But that's, as you say, the system. So I say I'm not. It's only rumours that the government are trying to pull back, because by all outside measures, the things they're doing are only fucking fueling the flames, man. Like they're like, oh, Omicron's going to kill your child. It's like, no, man, like this thing isn't dangerous to children whatsoever. But
it's a cold. It's a common cold.
It's a common cold because, I mean, I don't really know that many people who've had it, but as far as I can tell, it is just the sniffles. And people say that to me.
So many people have had it, and they've all said exactly the same thing. They had like one night of feeling bad because of a headache or like flu-like symptoms, 1 night, 2 nights maximum, and then 3 or 4 days of a cough, and then back to normal.
That's it though. Just sort of, I guess, closing that thread of thought. One thing we can probably look at positively is that for both of us, you know, for me, my story writing and kind of reflection on all that was has been very much helped. Well, it's come into fruition. It's bloomed during this period of difficult times, and some of your best work, in fact, your best work, has come out of this period as well. So, potentially looking at it as just the journey of life, and you know, there's things that happen to punctuate the otherwise banality of having an easy middle class life, right? Whatever. So it's like, you know, maybe it's kind of just what we needed to just jumpstart things.
I think it was, yeah. I mean, you know, we were super creative before this, but I think, this has given us a bit more of a pause for thought and given us time to focus on what we want to do. And here we
What's
are,
important,
man. Like your most important work is going to come soon. Definitely,
it's coming, man. Yeah, it feels really good. Like I don't know, I've got to talk to somebody about it, but it's coming together. I've been working on it every day. Like, so one of my resolutions has been to do writing every day. Because last year was probably like August through to December last year. We're like, I call it maximum pain, and like literally, you know, I was on the end of my tether.
I felt it. I really felt it.
We had to I didn't spare any expense to give myself the things that I needed to just get through mentally. So I was catching like Ubers into work and things like that, which, you know, you're spending a bit of money on that. But if just having to ride the bus and deal with people being fucking crazy, I was like, look, that's an expense. I'm willing to pay extra to just get, to just go to the office and not have to deal with that. And so there was a lot of things like that in different aspects of my life where I ended up kind of just paying for the convenience or the mental clarity to just get through. And my whole thing was like, hold on, pain ends. And I was like, seriously, that was my one day at a time. Just get through today, get through tomorrow, you know. And over New Year, I was able to take a week off and just really chill out. And so now I'd say I'm back to like operating speed. Like, I'm all good. But yeah, man, last year was fucked. So yeah, this year I've been writing every day. Got a few other things in the pipeline, but maybe it's a good time to talk about our plans for this year.
Yeah, man. Then definitely American road trip, man. I'm thinking about it more and more and more. And yesterday actually, I watched Nomad Land. Have you ever watched that with Frances McDormand?
No Man's Land?
Nomad Land.
Nomad Land, no, I haven't seen it.
I think it was last year it was released, or maybe a couple of years ago. Frances McDormand, fantastic actress, but she is a nomad and she lives in a van, and she is in I think South Dakota area in America. And so she lives in a van, and she had to leave her home because her hometown was basically abandoned. Like the whole zip code was basically discontinued. because this giant plant that was there closed down, and everyone who was working at the plant lived in this town, and then so everybody just left, right? Her husband worked at the plant. He died, unfortunately, and she just left in a van, and she was like driving around, and basically the film is just all about her meeting these other nomads on her journey around. And it's really fascinating, man, because it's a movie, but the characters in it are real nomads. So they're real nomads playing themselves in the movie. So it's really realistic, and the people, the characters are just like really relatable, and you really love them a lot. You know, one of them passes away and you just like, you know, you feel a little tear coming down your face. It's an amazing movie, man. And the music is by I don't know if you sent me his music, but it's Ludovico Einaudi, the Italian composer. I can't remember how I discovered him first, but I feel like you might have sent me something from him. But he's just this fantastic, you know, pianist, composer. His music with this movie is just like hand in glove. It's just absolutely perfect, you know. But the reason I mention this is because it makes me feel so much like I just want to travel around America, man. I want to get in a van and just drive around America.
Yeah, I mean, oh man, yeah, you're getting me, man. Yeah, just exploring, like, because what we're witnessing right now, in a way, is like the decline of the empire, right? And so the great America of, you know, the olden days is in decline, you know, and all of my work is about decline and decay. And this idea of a world, American-centric world, the Pax Americana, the peaceful world, at least in the West, all of it is pegged to the American superpower. And the visuals, the American people themselves, I always find it interesting. I had a call with an American guy, just a potential project the other day, and I was talking to him, and he's like, "Sorry, what'd you say?" Like he couldn't even understand the way I talk, and I was like, "Oh man, like you know, sorry, you know, like I had to really clarify my language, but just the confidence that they talk about things and money." Just the way they operate, it's like it's just a fundamentally different. I don't know, man. Like I feel with British people, I can kind of feel the connection. I'm like, yeah, these are my people, but in a way that's not either. You know, it's like because you guys do things differently in certain ways, and it's like as a small country, as you know, identifying kind of your connection to other places, especially when you speak the same language, but the differences. Finding the differences and the way that they, I don't know, the way that there's this kind of like principled belief. It's like things are black and white. It's like logic rules, you know, the rule of law, whatever. There's the way they approach things, and then how my practice would work in that situation as an outsider. Because, you know, I wouldn't be an American photographer. I'd be like this little known New Zealand Japanese photographer guy exploring, you know, the abandoned town. Which man, that would be so cool. You know,
we're doing it. We're definitely doing it.
And we get the van. we have like a kind of some, you know, some people show us around. And we meet these characters along the way, and then it becomes like you know, kind of Jacques Kerouac kind of on the road. You know, and you meet these characters, and what I love is little American people that, you know, they're very open to just talking about stuff. You know, like. You don't really get that so much in New Zealand, but, you know, people are quite reserved. But, you know, it's like, yeah, you get the life story of someone over, you know, someone, you're hitchhiking, someone picks you up and you get their life story, you know, from beginning to end, you know, and here we are now in this very moment that we're speaking, like you get the whole thing. And yeah, I don't know, it just sounds, and the other thing I've been getting into is tornadoes, man, just random topic. But, you know, like in Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, they have the tornado alley, and so for some reason that's like where tornadoes form. And I was watching some videos on YouTube, and I was like, man, this is so fucking cool, because it just instantly the weather changes and you just get this like thing arrive and it just destroys and then it just disappears after 10 minutes. And there's a whole thing of people chasing, like storm chasers, and they like go after it in their car. I mean, you must have seen that movie Twister back in the day.
Twister, yeah. Love that movie.
And just the sound, because like the hail like dropping down and just the massive changes in weather events, it feels like such an American thing. It's just like, wow, it's just power, raw power. And I was like, man, imagine going to, it was like Dodge City, Kansas, and just like in tornado times and just going and exploring that, photographing that, the weather, the clouds. I don't know, man, I'm just talking, but yeah.
But going back to what you said about like British people, yeah, I think we're really, we're a lot more uptight than New Zealanders. But I don't know about Americans. I don't know how to describe them, but they're just so kind of focused on, I guess what it is the American dream.
Yeah.
Right? Like becoming the best. I don't know what it is, man. I don't. What is their culture? What is their sort of?
That's what I'd like to understand. Regarding British people, I read a really great essay which we should put in the show notes. It's from 1951, and it was this New Zealand author, journalist writing from London about the New Zealand waterfront strikes that happened at the time and the union movement and a few other things, and the parallels to that with what's kind of happening today with COVID stuff and government kind of crackdowns is super interesting, because at that time they basically shut down. They were smashing these striking workers' heads in, and the New Zealand public were fully supporting it. They were like, fuck those guys, even though they just wanted a living wage. It's very similar to kind of what's happening today. And culturally, he talks about kind of how that came about. New Zealanders are very compliant people, generally speaking. And then he talks about this kind of false myth, that this kind of idea that New Zealanders can go back to England and that they will be amongst kind of their middle-class peers. But really, the thing that you don't get is the class system, because I know there is a huge class system in the UK, and depending on the way your voice sounds, you can say, well, that person went to a public school, went to a private school. And we don't get that here, because everyone's kind of like, well, at least initially we've got this kind of flat society supposedly, but people don't realise when you go over to the UK, there's like people walking around who've got generational wealth. They would be sirs and kings and that sort of thing, royal family,
dukes,
Duke of the Manor, and because we don't have that here, and so it's like, we kind of naively assume that we do connect into English society, but if anything, it's like maybe some mining town in Sheffield or Manchester, but most definitely not London, and not the South. And so it's like, and you turn up and kind of the cliquiness as well, I find very interesting. You're either in or you're not. I don't know, man. Does that ring a bell for you?
Do you not have that in New Zealand?
Well, we kind of do in a sense, but like not being of the right class to be able to go somewhere or do something. I don't know if that's even a real thing over there, but
it is. It definitely is in parts of London. Yeah, of course you got the Ritz, or you've got these sort of super exclusive theatres and stuff like that where you do have to really put on a show. But I don't know, yeah. I mean, I just completely ignore all of that. I'm so external to all of that I can't even really, I don't even know where that stuff is going on,
Yeah, well, the best stuff, the best music and artwork and all of that is it's kind of working class stuff anyway, right? Like, I don't know, man. Like, there's a whole essay or book or whatever on this sort of thing, but definitely with the American psyche, I talk to people and they're so confident in what it is, whatever small insignificant thing it happens to be, some business idea or something, and they're so sure that this is the greatest thing mankind has ever invented. And I'm like, well, actually, it's not really, it's just kind of this shitty little thing, but I'll help you out with it,
That describes American culture, confidence. That one word, that's it.
It's hubris though, because a lot of the time it's like, well, actually, what does that mean? Like, you got this thing, you got this startup idea, you got this thing that you're working on, But in the face of, God, it doesn't mean anything, like, I don't know. We'll have to discover it as we go through our road trip, and I'm sure it's going to be educational. And they're lovely people, very giving and open. I think that's one thing that's really, they'll tell you their life story, which you don't, as I said, you don't get that in New Zealand. Even for me, talking to other people, they're like, unless, especially my hometown, I'm now an outsider there. I don't fit in anymore, so no one talks to me. It's very family based. You don't really make friends. New Zealand, it's kind of like the people you went to school with and your family are your people, and it's very hard to get into a circle once you've done that. And so most of my friends are from overseas here. Because I don't really know anyone from school anymore, so it's like I'm on my own.
I'm in the same position as you, man, like trying to get into sort of like friendship groups and trying to find friends and stuff like that. And once you hit 30, man, like everyone's having babies, so you got to find people who don't have babies or who aren't English, basically. I mean, people with kids are all good sometimes, but if they're trying to do the normal thing, then it's like they settle down and but just quickly, like talking about so 2022, so American road trip if possible. I'm not sure if it might be 23, to be honest. Totally. Besides that, what else is on your books? What are your plans for this year? A lot of self-improvement. I've been thinking about this a lot for a couple of years. I've been a bit stagnant on a few areas of my life where I've felt I could do with a bit of improvement. Just stuff like my relationship to sugar, my relationship to like exercise, things like this. Just sort of being a bit more mindful with what I'm eating, and so I signed up for the gym. I'm not eating sugar during the week. I've stopped smoking. All of these things that I should have done years ago, but it takes becoming 34, I guess, for me anyway, to have the realization that I should really, really approach these things and do something about it. I also signed up for the London Library, which is like, it's a library that you do have to pay for, so it's not free, but they just have like a fantastic collection. And I spent the whole day there, and I got Mishima Yukio's Confessions of a Mask.
Oh yeah.
In this gorgeous hardback version. Can
you smell it?
The jacket.
Is it good? Yeah.
It smells like Japan. But for me, the gym is kind of like working my body, and then signing up for the library is working my mind, right? These are my two focuses this year, I guess.
It's beautiful, man.
That's going to keep me busy.
The library is really good, eh? Like it's funny because things have changed so much, because in Wellington the library here has been shut down for like 5 years since the earthquake. And so I used to go up to the one at the university, but there's just something about being amongst, like, in this space, and there's something very romantic about it as well, because I remember especially up at the university library, it's like you're sort of amongst these young and beautiful people, and you're like, man, this is special, and it is a nice place to just go and not have your phone or anything and just read a book, even if you're bringing your own book, just to be amongst people. And the health thing, I think that's like really important as you get older, just to kind of like, you can kind of do whatever you want when you're in your 20s, but as you get older, your diet is important. I stopped drinking, and that, what I liked about that was it was a passive thing. Like, I didn't have to go and do anything, I just had to stop doing something, and that kind of has helped. And with sugar, I totally get you. Carbohydrates, all of that stuff. I mean, it's kind of like a balance though, because it's like food is culture, right? And so giving up everything and just being this like automaton eating like the keto. It's like, yeah.
Right, exactly. So this is my point. Like with sugar and alcohol, for example, I said to myself that I'm not going to eat during the week. So I don't drink during the week and I don't eat any sugar during the week. And when I say any sugar, I mean candy, chocolate, stuff like that. Fructose that you get in a fruit. I'm not counting that because I'm not being so strict. But basically, that is incredible because I just like if I get to Wednesday or Thursday and I really crave a chocolate bar, it's so much easier for me to say, just wait 2 more days, rather than trying to get rid of the thought completely. Because if I gave up sugar completely and I was really strict with myself, I would cave because I it's just going to happen. I'm just definitely going to cave. But if I restrict myself, then I think I have a better chance of doing it at least. And then further down the line, then I can sort of start thinking about maybe not doing Saturday. No sugar on Saturday as well, something like that. But why did you quit alcohol? What was the reason for that?
Oh man, I mean, I've never been a big drinker, and I have gone through periods when I was at university. Man, I was looking back and I was such a good boy. Like I was vegetarian and I didn't drink. Just like it wasn't like even political or any like it was just I just didn't want to do it like. And then, I don't know, I started drinking and then, just last 2 years, I was like, man, I'm actually becoming an alcoholic. Like, I was drinking a bottle of wine a day and and it was quite, when you're traveling, like, because I might pick it up again if I can travel, but when you're just at home, just like guzzling it and it's like, this isn't really ideal. And I had a few moments where I drank too much and I don't know, kind of gave me a little bit of anxiety, just getting really quite drunk a couple of times last year, and I was like, I don't really need this anymore. So I just tried it, and I honestly didn't miss it, man, one bit. Like I just was like, I'm ready. Like, maybe that's just like I was lucky to be able to do that, but I just like one day I was like, this is the last drink, and then I just turned it off. It's been really good. Like just getting into soda water. Sorry, this is a bit lame, but soda water, man, like that is just like the ultimate cheat kind of life hack because it feels like you're drinking like a soft drink or an alcoholic beverage, but it's just water with carbon, just like soda stream. And it gives you the kind of the sensation, the kind of bubbles in your mouth, and it's just water, there's no sugar or anything.
So no flavour.
No flavour.
Straight.
Yeah. You can put like a lemon in it or something, but
sure.
That was like, man, and now I'm getting that. And so the placebo effect, the kind of Pavlov's dog, I'm not scanning the QR codes for COVID, but I am actually doing, the soda water instead of alcohol. And so I'm like, just drink that back. And that's like, that's really good. And then just, kind of skipping breakfast. So I do a lot of fasting, that sort of thing.
Boom. Yes, I was going to talk about this next. So I've been listening to a lot of Andrew Huberman podcasts. I'm not sure if you're aware of him, but he's a neuroscientist. I believe he works at Harvard, and he's got this podcast which is all about health and improving your health. And he talks a lot about fasting because he fasts. He doesn't eat breakfast in the morning. And so basically he has this 16-hour block every day where he doesn't eat. And that 16 hours includes his sleep. So after dinner, he, starts the timer of those 16 hours. And then, so he doesn't eat until about 11 a.m. or 12, midday. But also what he does is he puts all of his carbohydrates at the end of the day. So for lunch, he'll eat a regular normal sized lunch, but it won't have any carbs. But at nighttime, that's when he'll eat carbs, right? Like, not go crazy, of course, but if he wants to eat bread or pasta or something like that, he'll put them at dinner instead. And I thought, I'll just try that for a week and see how it goes. Man, I'm feeling so good. My energy levels, and this is so cliche, right? Everybody fucking says this on YouTube. This is like a YouTube. My energy levels, man, is so good. But honestly, I used to crash around about 2-3 p.m. No longer the case at all. I used to have to have a nap on a lot of the days when my sugar levels would crash. Not at all anymore. So carbohydrates at dinner only. Skip breakfast. Oh God, I've been feeling so good.
Yeah, I love that, man, because I think that there's no way. I tried actually cutting carbs completely, or going low carb, but just culturally, I just can't do it. Like I need to have rice and stuff for all of the meals I do. So, but yeah, what you said about like doing lightweight lunch, I can really connect with that, man. It's sweet. So it sounds like we've got some ideas for sort of health-based goals, and
it's a bit more health, isn't it?
Yeah, man.
Are we going to start a health podcast? Is this going to become?
Yeah, no. Well, actually, I mean, I hear that because I left the gym, and I was like, you know what, this is a chore. I just can't be fucked doing this anymore. And it's like, well, actually, I'd rather just kind of keep my body moving, and do physical work
in other ways.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's like I feel like a bit of a hamster just running on the treadmill or something. Like,
I know what you mean, but I like going to the gym because it makes me it just gives me a place to go.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier for me to whip up the energy and the commitment to do it. Like if I said to myself, okay, I'm just going to run along the river at night or something like that, I just don't think the commitment would be there for me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't.
The gym is good, man. Like, don't get me wrong. I think because I was doing it quite hard out for 2 years, and yeah, I think you get to that point, then you be like, okay, cool. I've done that. What else can I do? Or you can keep going with it. But besides that, health, is there anything else that you're wanting to look at this year? Or
creatively is just writing as much music as I possibly can, getting my music into as many ears as possible.
We're gonna have to do a strategy session about that stuff.
100%, man.
Because your stuff's I've been thinking about this as well. How do you get it out there? Platform. That's right. Because we were talking about the letters, the hands. Yeah,
the Wanderer letters.
Yeah, because one of the ideas we had was, because it's so hard to send stuff out now. Just with the shipping logistical challenges around shipping things out, but sending like hand printed letters out to people with short stories. Kind of like like a physical newsletter, but for music, and I mean that's still an idea that I'm playing with. But for music, how would you do it? Like, how do you get it to people?
Would have to be some kind of digital QR code, right? If you wanted to make it simple to send in a letter,
or just
then I don't know. I don't think you can send anything physical out because people don't have CD players anymore. People don't have mini disc players anymore. Although mini discs are coming back, man. Oh, yeah. Seriously, like I've seen a couple of record labels recently release music on mini disc, and this is just blowing my mind.
Well, the way I see it is my audience is already pretty niche. Like,
true,
and I love them all. Each one of them dearly. And so, what can I do to get stuff to them? Because I just sometimes feel like emailing it out or just having it on a website, it's a bit shit. Like, I don't even read emails half the time. So it's like, but if you were to send me a short story, like 2 printed pages, folded up in a nice envelope and delivered to your door, it's only a few dollars.
You're going to pay attention to that.
Like, I can see people being like, this is it. And then, it's physical. And then you just cherish it a little bit more than you would if it was digital. But we might have to do another session on that at some point, man, and just work out those ideas.
Yeah, we should do, man.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going to be focusing on this year? Anything else?
I'm pulling back a little bit. I had to make some hard decisions around exhibitions. So I had intended on doing an exhibition, the one that got cancelled by our dear leader because of the lockdown last year. So that got cancelled. I was like, okay, well, I'll do it in October, November this year. But just looking at things, it's just not tenable. Like, it was going to be in Auckland. I'm pretty confident that we're going to have a quote-unquote surge in winter, so in about 4 or 5 months. So you guys will be going into summer, but we'll be going into winter, and we'll have 2 years of backlog, a 2-year backlog of people not getting sick, really, like, because everyone's masking up and whatnot. So the common flu, the cold, all of that, plus Omicron and whatever the next thing is, that's all going to hit this year in winter in New Zealand, I think. And there'll be, I'm kind of predicting there'll be another lockdown of some sort, or that sort of thing. So I was like, okay, pull back on that. So I had to cancel the manufacture of the light boxes and the frames and all of that stuff. So I'm kind of consolidating a little bit and just say, all right, let's take it easy, let's chill, work on the books, work on the magazine, work on that kind of sending stuff out, like the physical publications, as opposed to in-person events, which is really painful. I didn't want to let it go, but I just had to. And yes, I'll be looking at that stuff, and maybe working on the veggie garden and and seeing what else I can do.
Sweet, man, that sounds great.
But I will. We might wrap it up, man. We've covered a lot of different stuff today.
It's a big one.
It's good. Yeah, it's some good ideas there, and I am keen as kind of for this year as well, just to keep these conversations going. I've got a few people who I'd like to bring onto the show, who are doing some cool stuff. I know you've got some ideas as well, and just keep the conversation going, because if anything, 2022, it may be more difficult than it was last year, man. And people need to, these conversations need to be had, and people need to have a place to express themselves, and kind of a bit of guiding hope, if anything.
They do. I hope we can be that little bit of guiding hope.
A little bit of light. All right, man. Well, you take it easy, and we'll keep in touch.
Just before we go, I want to read you one of my meditations.
Oh yes.
Something that I've been meditating a lot, and something that I am going to meditate a lot on this year. Yeah. And I'll just leave this with you, and then we'll just drop the mic and go. Yeah. But here we go. You are who you are when no one's looking. Remember that. Reflect on that. Think about it. And I'll see you soon, man.
All right, see you.
Take care.